People are generally better persuaded by the reasons which they have themselves discovered than by those which have come into the mind of others. And this quote from the French mathematician Blaise Pascal beautifully captures the essence of what we are going to discuss today, which is now the fourth claim about the human nature and behavior change process that can hopefully, at least to some extent, inform us about the best possible practices that we can use in order to help our clients to change some of their health-related behaviors. Now, in the last episodes of the series, we have already explored three different claims in regards to human nature and behavior change journey. And the first claim was that the people have a natural inclinations towards becoming the best possible versions of themselves. The second claim was that although people have a natural inclinations towards becoming the best possible versions of themselves, they can at the same time be ambivalent about the different paths that they can take on their journey. And the third claim was that although people have a natural inclinations towards becoming the best possible versions of themselves, people are usually very resistant towards other people telling them what to do in order to become those best selves. Now, today we are going to explore our fourth and the final claim about the human nature and behavior change process, which now aims to identify the certain conditions within the individual and also within the interpersonal relationships of that individual that can make behavior changes more likely to occur. So, what are the conditions within the person? And what are the conditions within the relationships that they engage in that can increase the likelihood of their successful behavior change? So the fourth claim is that the people are more likely to change because of their own internal reasons and ideas for change. And the more people hear themselves voicing out those internal reasons and ideas for change, the higher is the likelihood of their future change. So let's delve now into the first part of the fourth claim, is that people are more likely to change because of their own internal reasons and ideas for change. Which basically means that when the reasons for change are coming from within the persons themselves, rather than from some external source, when they are authentic and autonomous expression of their own internal states, then the likelihood of behavior change happening in the future is much more higher. In the last part of the series, we have already explained the relationship between the autonomy as a basic psychological human need and an intrinsic motivation for change. And we already said that every human being have a need to feel autonomous in their life, to feel like they are the sole authors of their own decisions and choices. To feel like their own decisions and choices are authentic expression of their own interests and values, and not a byproduct of some external forces that they have to comply with. And what the research, especially what we also mentioned from the last week, that what the research from self-determination theory especially show, is then when people's autonomy is supported in their behavior change journey by the side of the coach, when people have a saying in what they want to do and how they want to go about it, people usually report greater intrinsic motivation for change and also greater personal sense of well-being during the behavior change process itself, which then usually lead to a longer lasting and more sustainable behavior changes further down the line. So what's important for us here to understand is that people are more likely to change when the reasons and ideas for change are coming from within themselves rather than from some external source. In this case, in our case, from the side of the coach. no matter how good, no matter how well articulated, or how convincing the coach's argument really are. All these arguments are not going to matter that much if they are not at the same time representative of the client's own internal states. Which brings us now to the second part of our claim, which is not only that the people are more likely to change because of their own reasons and ideas for change, but people are also more likely to change the more they hear themselves voicing those same reasons and ideas out loud. What we now know very confidently from the process research in motivational interviewing is that the way how people talk about the change, the language they use when they talk about the change, is a very good predictor of their future change. And also we mentioned something that we mentioned in the previous part of the series. So the more people positively talk about the change, the more they voice what we mentioned in the previous part of the series as a change talk, the more they talk about their own desires, their own abilities, their own reasons, their own needs, their own commitments for making this change, the higher is the likelihood of their future change. It seems that people hearing themselves voicing their own reasons for change in the context of empathic interpersonal relationship spontaneously, that actually creates the conditions for greater intrinsic motivations and commitment for change to happen. Now, unfortunately, the opposite, as we also mentioned in the previous part of the series, the opposite also holds true. So the more people talk negatively about the changes that they want to make, the more they voice their own reasons why making this change is not such a good idea at the moment. What we said before, what we named as a sustained talk, the more the people voice their arguments against change, the lower is the likelihood of their future change. Now, why is that really important for us as coaches? Well, it's important because research in motivational interviewing established the causal connection between the different communication styles that coaches tend to use during their interaction with the clients and the amount of the change and sustained talk that clients are then giving back to the coach. Which means that we as a coaches can directly influence how much change or sustained talk client voices during the session by the way how we communicate with them about the changes that they want to make. And what has been found is that the more controlling language coach uses, the more he tries to lectures, persuades, confronts, argues with the client, the more authoritative the coach is, like at the my way or the highway stance he assumes, the more sustained talk will usually arise from the side of the client during the coaching process. Now, on the other hand, the more what we say MI, motivational interviewing consistent the coach is, which means that the more autonomy supportive he is, the more collaborative environment the coach creates, the more coach look at the clients not only as a passive recipient of his own wisdom and expertise, but as a person that has something valuable to contribute to their coaching relationship, the more change talk we usually tend to see from the side of the client. And the more change talk the client voices throughout the session, the more they hear themselves positively talk about the changes that they want to make, the higher is the likelihood of them making those positive behavior changes in the future actually is. And all of this basically means that we as a coaches can to a very large extent influence the outcomes of the coaching process by the language that we use and the attitudes that we bring to the coaching relationship. The uncoachable client is usually not something that we get, but is something that we create by using too controlling, persuasive, and overly directive coaching style. The paradox of the whole situation is that by us as coaches wanting our clients to change and pressuring them to change, we can literally make our clients talk themselves out of changing. And one of the main goals in motivational interviewing is first to create that kind of the relationship with a client within which then client will feel safe to explore their own inner motivations and ideas for change. And then within that relationship, we are then actively evoking from the client, we are inviting the client to talk about their own reasons, their own abilities, their own needs, their own commitments for making their change. Why is that change important for them? And what change exactly do they really want to make? And if they do decide to make a change, how would they go about it in order to succeed? In motivational interviewing, we invite the clients to paint the picture of their own bright future for themselves, instead of us painting that picture for them. And if the conversation has been done right, what we usually say, the clients are the ones who are basically talking themselves into changing, instead of us struggling in trying to do that for them. And how we exactly supposed to do that, we are going to talk about in a much more detail later during the series. For now, it is just important for us to remember that so people are more likely to change because of their own reasons and ideas for change. And the more people positively talk about the changes that they want to make, the higher is the likelihood of their future change. One of the main goals of motivational interviewing is for us coaches to create that kind of the relationship within which then the clients are going to feel safe and encouraged from the side of the coach to explore and then freely talk about their own inner motivations and ideas for change. And we are going to conclude this part with a quote from the founder of motivational interviewing, William Miller, that beautifully captures the essence of what we discussed in this part of the series. Instead of trying to adopt the top-down position and encourage, inform, advise, or convince someone to change, you come alongside them and help them work this out for themselves. Thank you so much for being here with me and looking forward to see you in the future part of the series.